Gentlemen, what is going on today? My name is Ryan Mickler. I'm your host and the founder of the Order of Man podcast and movement. Welcome here to the end of 2022. Can you believe it? This has been a wild year, a successful year, a challenging year for me personally. And I'm sure you guys feel very much the same way. Lots of ups, lots of downs, lots of victories, lots of setbacks, and everything in between. I hope you're doing okay. That's important to me. I want to make sure I give you everything that I possibly can to thrive and to succeed and to win, because I know how many men are struggling. I know society isn't collectively doing us any favors, which is okay. We can handle it, but sometimes, life is tough. And my goal here is to give you everything I possibly can. And that's really the subject of today's conversation is emotional sovereignty. We're going to talk about how to have control of your emotions. We're going to talk about why that's important. We're going to talk about ways to do that. Because look, as I said, life is challenging. Life is difficult. And if we can't be in control of our emotions, what can we be in control of? There is so much outside of our control, and the way that we feel and being in control of those things is entirely within our control. So we'll get to that in just a minute. Before we get into the show, want to let you know that, number one, the Iron Council is open, guys. We've got a brotherhood of over 1,200 men now who are all banded together, working together, helping each other out, serving each other, having deep and meaningful conversations, giving each other the tools and the frameworks and the resources and guidance and direction and accountability they need to thrive in their lives. So we're open for another roughly 7 or 8 days. So if you head to orderofman.com/Iron Council, orderofman.com/Iron Council, you can learn more and you can band with us and you can join us inside of the Iron Council. So guys, let's talk about emotional sovereignty. Now, the reason I'm talking about this is actually something that I've been working on. And if we break this down, first and foremost, I want to say that men have emotions. We are emotional creatures. All right. I know everybody says, men aren't supposed to be emotional, or we're not to express our emotions and this sort of thing. That's not correct. That's not accurate. We are indeed supposed to be emotional. We are indeed supposed to have feelings. We do have feelings. And the more we attempt to suppress these things and hide them and force them down, never to be seen or heard from again, the more damage we do to ourselves internally. And then eventually it seeps out and it impacts our external lives. So since we have them, since they're there for a reason, we can talk about how to manage these things. Sovereignty. Let's talk about that word. I wrote a book in 2017 called Sovereignty, The Battle for the Hearts and Minds of Men. And in it, I talk a lot about financial sovereignty and having control over your thoughts and having control over and autonomy over your own life. But I don't think I really hit on the emotional sovereignty that much, meaning that you own, or the root word of sovereignty is to reign. You reign over your emotions. You are responsible and you are in charge of your emotions. And more specifically, I would say your emotional response. Sometimes we feel the way that we feel, and that's it. But the way that we respond is certainly within our control. So maybe this would have been more aptly titled emotional response sovereignty, but that doesn't sound as good as emotional sovereignty. So the goal of this conversation is to help you reign over your emotions, to be a king, to be a ruler, to have authority over the way you feel about things, and then in turn, the way you act. Now, what I want to say is that this is not about getting in touch with your feminine side. This is not about tapping into any of that, quote unquote, feminine energy. All right. We're not supposed to have a feminine side. We're men for a reason. Now, usually when people say that, they're saying your feminine side is your emotional side. That isn't true, because what that leads us to believe is that being emotional is a feminine characteristic. It isn't. Okay. Responding emotionally may be more apt or appropriately at describing women generally. And that's fine. I think women generally are more empathetic. They're more kind. They're more compassionate. They're more nurturing. They're more caring, typically. And so that's how feminine deals with her emotions. The way that we deal with it, or at least I think we ought to be working towards, is taking the factors, the feedback of emotions, and then applying it logically in our life to improve our lives and our environment around us. So this is not about getting in touch with your feminine side, and it's not about crying at every little thing. That's a response to your emotions. It's not what I'm addressing here. I'm talking about reigning over, being in control of your emotions. And here's what I want you to imagine for a second. Imagine that you're in tune with your emotions, that you know what you're feeling and experiencing emotionally in any given moment, that you know when you're getting angry, that you know when you're sad, that you know when you're happy, that you know when somebody is taking advantage of you, or that you're going through a difficult situation, that external set of circumstances is not dictating every control or every facet of your life. And that you can be strong, and you can be bold, and you can be courageous, and you can be resilient in the face of somebody taking advantage of you, or somebody deliberately trying to hurt you, or losing a job, or dealing with the death of a loved one, or dealing with a challenging situation with one of your children. Imagine how liberating that is, that you're no longer dictating your life and your decisions based solely on your emotions, but you're just using it as a variable, as a piece of the puzzle, so that you could make good decisions that are going to lead yourself and other people forward. Imagine that for a second. How incredible would that feel? Imagine not being happy or mad just because somebody else is a certain way, or did or didn't do something to you, or did or didn't do something the way that you thought they should have. Imagine what kind of freedom that represents. That's what we're going to talk about. Let's talk about 5 keys to recapturing and regaining your emotional sovereignty. Number 1, you have to realize that you are an incredible human being filled with worth, inherent worth, because you're a human. Not because you did or didn't do something, but because you're a human. In fact, you are divine just by your very essence. Now, granted, there's some things that you can do that I think will turn you into a value add, an asset, rather than a liability to your family and your friends and your community and the people around you. But you are inherently valuable. And it's important to understand our divine nature, because our divine nature is not flippant. Our divine nature doesn't change. God doesn't change the way that he feels about you based on what you did or didn't do. I mean, too many of us allow other people who, with all due respect, because we are too, are vain and fickle and emotional and lazy and greedy. Other people are those. We are those things. And if we're allowing human beings, and we know how fragile we are, we're allowing other humans to dictate how we feel, what a horrible way of going through life. And I'm not saying that I have this all figured out. I don't. This is why I'm talking about it. In fact, guys, I'll let you in on a little secret. When I do these Friday field notes, and when I do Facebook and Instagram posts and all this sort of thing, it's a journal for me. I'm talking to myself. I need these lessons more than anybody else. So this is a reminder for me. But I don't want to feel good or bad based on how my wife might be feeling that day. I don't want to feel good or bad about myself based on what my children are going through. I don't want to feel good or bad based on how my performance at work is, or based on what my boss thinks of me, or based on what complete strangers on the internet think of me. I don't want to live my life like that. I want to feel good. I want to be in charge of my emotions and the way I feel about myself, regardless of these external circumstances. And the first way we do that, it is realizing that there is an objective standard of your level of worth as a divine son of God. How incredible is it to know that you aren't worth less or more based on what some other random person thinks of you, but that you are worth everything to our Creator. That's the foundation. It's immovable, I should say, unwavering. And that should fill you with hope and confidence. Number 2, you have to realize that you are responsible for your own emotions. It's not your wife's job to make you happy. Because if she can make you happy, she can make you miserable too. It goes both ways. So if you're one of these guys who believes, well, it's my wife, she should focus on making me happy all the time. Switch happy with miserable. Would you consider it your wife's job to make you miserable? No, of course not. But if you think it's her job to make you happy, then equally you think it's her job to make you miserable, because we experience all sets of all kinds of emotions. And if you're giving somebody else autonomy, control, sovereignty over the way that you feel, then it's all the emotions, not just cherry-picked ones like, oh, well, it's her job to make me happy. It's my boss's job to make sure I'm fulfilled at work. It's my kid's job to make sure that I feel wanted and needed as a dad. It's not. It's not. You're responsible for your own emotions. If you're not happy, it's because you are not happy. If you're mad, it's because you are mad. Nobody made you mad. Your kids didn't make you mad today when they were teasing each other and being loud, or they broke something at the house. They didn't make you mad. You got mad. Now, they were behaving a certain way and your response was to be angry, but that's your decision. That's the locus of control that you have over yourself. If you think, oh, that person made me mad, that person offended me. No, they didn't offend you. You took offense. That was within your control. You decided to be offended. And this is prevalent in society today, right? Everybody's like, what Stanford just came out with their list of 100 words or 10,000 words or whatever it was that they could say or couldn't say. One of the words I saw was brave. You can't use brave because it's cultural appropriation from Native Americans. I don't even think I can say Native Americans. Indigenous people. Heaven forbid you call a man a he and a woman a she without assuming they aren't the other. Like, everybody wants to be offended about everything. And yet I cannot. It is not within my control to offend you. I don't have that power. I don't want to give people that power over me. You have to choose to be offended. You know how many times people have said things to me that were insulting, or they tried for it to be insulting, and I just decided that I wasn't going to be insulted? Now, granted, I'm not above being offended, but I recognize where it comes from, and that's me. I'm the one who has to take it. Nobody can give it to me. Same thing with our emotions. Nobody can make you happy. Nobody can make you mad. Nobody can make you glad. Nobody can make you sad. You realize that, and you realize that every emotion you experience is an emotion that you have control over. Then you begin to regain sovereignty. Well, Ryan, you don't understand. You know, my wife is this and that and this. Well, she might be this and that and this, but I know plenty of other men who have wives that are this and that and this, and they're responding to it differently than you are. So what's the problem, really? Well, it's you. It's me. It's us individually deciding how we're going to respond to situations. We cannot give people power to affect us like that. Well, you know, I'm just really happy today because my wife decided to have sex with me. Oh my gosh. Like, that's what makes you happy? I mean, granted, yeah, happy, sure. But that's what your life hinges upon, whether or not she has sex with you? Well, I got a promotion today at work, so, you know, awesome. And you should feel glad about that, but it wasn't your boss that provided that for you. You know what it was? Your hard work, your dedication, your commitment, your level of mastery, your ability to be competent in a specific set of skills. And yes, your boss acknowledged it, but if that's all it takes to get you off emotionally, then what happens if he's having a bad day and he decides to yell at you? Now, do you have a bad day? Well, yeah. If your life revolves around what he thinks of you, that's going to be a problem. Now, look, I'm not saying that we shouldn't take into consideration the way certain people feel about us. I think it's important that we work towards helping our wives feel good about who we are as men. That's going to help us lead better. And it's also going to let us know that we're on the right path to serving her well. Same thing goes for a boss or a client or a child. The way they feel about you is important. So I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying we need to exercise a little level of discernment there. But ultimately, you are responsible for your own emotions, and start acting like it. And don't say, hey, you made me mad today. No, they didn't make you mad. You decided to be mad because they said something you didn't like. It triggered you. We're going to get to that in a minute. The next you need to know is that confidence is earned. Confidence is earned. I've said this a million times. Confidence is earned. If you see somebody who's confident, not to be confused with arrogance or pride or excessive pride or ego, but if you see someone who is confident, it's because they've done something in their life. They've done something valuable. They've done something meaningful. They're working towards a powerful, purpose-driven pursuit and objective, and they've accomplished it, or they're on that path. That's what gives you confidence. Anything else is manufactured. Arrogance is manufactured. It's a veil. It's to hide your insecurity. That's what arrogance is. Well, I'm going to be this way. I'm going to be loud and boisterous and rambunctious and obnoxious so that other people think that I'm confident. Well, really what you're doing is you're trying to hide because you're not confident. You're the opposite of confidence. You're insecure. And we all know people like that. They're the loudest, most obnoxious people you'd meet. Why are they like that? Because they're trying to hide behind their humor or behind their volume or behind their obnoxious behavior or behind their worldly treasures and pursuits. They're hiding, but they know how they feel. Because when they lay down at night, they're not thinking about their fancy cars. They're not thinking about all the money in their bank account. They're not thinking about the amount of followers they have on Instagram. They're thinking about themselves and usually their own inadequacies and their own insecurities. And that's hard. I've been there. Every day I think about that. Where do I fall short? Where am I struggling? Where do I not live up to my ideal? Every day I think about that. But I am confident. I'm a confident podcaster. Why? Because we've done almost 1,000 podcasts now. I know how to hold a conversation with a powerful guest because I've done it a lot of times. I'm confident in my ability to grow a business because I've grown multiple businesses that are successful. I'm confident in my ability as a father because I'm a good father. And I try to engage with my kids and I try to teach them lessons and I care about them and I actively work on being better at fatherhood. So I'm proud of that. And so I'm confident in it. If you want to have control over the way that you feel and you don't want to feel depressed and you don't want to feel sad and you don't want to feel down and you don't want to feel sorrow, then get up, get out of bed, find something meaningful to point yourself at, and then go to work on getting there. On making yourself capable of achieving that thing. All right, next is we have to begin to objectify our emotions. This one is really difficult. And in a lot of ways, objectify the circumstances we find ourselves in. What does it mean to objectify? Really, it has a negative connotation, right? We usually, when we hear it, we think objectifying women. So if we were to take that, if you're objectifying a woman, you're basically stripping her of her humanity and you're reducing her down to an inanimate object. That's what it means to objectify. It's like it has no feelings. It has no relevance. It has no inherent worth. I'm just stripping it down to its base level. Is it useful for me? So that's the negative connotation, for example, when it comes to objectifying women. Not a lovely behavior, right? But when it comes to our emotions, we should do that because we too often give too much weight to the way that we feel about things. For example, this morning, my alarm went off. It goes off at 6:30 every morning. Goes off at 6:30. Wake up. I'm like, oh, I don't feel like going to the gym. Well, guess what? The way I feel about it doesn't matter. That's what I mean that we need to objectify our emotions. I feel lazy. I don't want to go to the gym. Am I lazy? No, but I feel like being lazy. Well, guess what? I'm going to objectify my emotion, strip it down to its base level, most irrelevant degree that it can be stripped down to, and get my belt up and go into the gym, which is exactly what I did. When we're angry, you've got to look at it a little bit different. You've got to look at it objectively. You don't need to personalize it. Don't need to put this big story behind it. Don't need to attach it to other experiences that we've had in life. I'm angry. Okay, why are you angry? Well, I'm angry because X, Y, and Z. And this is how you begin to objectify your emotions. You start to uncover them. You got to explore them. You got to spend time thinking about it. If you're upset with something, I was upset the other day. This is silly. This is ridiculous. But I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. My wife and I were having a conversation, and it wasn't a deep conversation. I can't even remember what we were talking about. We were having a conversation, and my oldest son walks into the kitchen, and my wife turns from me, and I think she tickled my oldest son or gave him a hug or did something. And it triggered me. And so I just walked out of the room, but I kind of marched out of the room. And then later I started to evaluate why I did this. And I told her I was sorry that I just marched out of the room. She's like, yeah, what's like, are you mad? And the answer was, I was mad. But I wasn't mad. I spent some time thinking about it. I was hurt. Well, what a silly thing. I was hurt because our oldest son walked into the kitchen and she gave him a hug or tickled it or whatever. Again, whatever she did. That's what I was hurt by. Guys, this is how stupid it is. This is how ridiculous we are. So I got out my journal and I started writing this down. You know what? When her and I were talking and she went and gave my son a hug, I felt rejected. What a ridiculous thing. Like, you all hearing it are like, that's ridiculous, Ryan. How weak and fragile are you? Yeah, well, welcome to the club, because we all do it. And most of the time, we don't even know why. And so we'll march out of the room and we'll pout, we'll stomp our feet, or we'll yell at our wife, or we'll do something stupid to get back at her. It's like, because you feel rejected? Why? Because you were having a conversation and she turned away for a minute. Like, that's ridiculous. But guys, you need to really spend some time with the way that you feel about things, and journaling over the past, I would say 2 to 3 weeks, has been a very powerful exercise for me, because now I can objectively look at the scenario and I realize, as I'm talking with you and as I was journaling, how ridiculous that scenario sounds. But in the moment, it doesn't feel ridiculous. Like, I actually felt hurt. Like, I really was feeling that way. And now, if I document this and I objectively take a look at why I'm feeling the way that I feel, and now, okay, well, I know I feel rejected. Well, why do I feel rejected? Well, because she turned her attention away from you and you felt less important. Well, where did that come from? Did that come from an issue when you were a child? Did that come from a rejection of another woman? Like, where did that actually come from? Excuse me. Because the more that we know where it comes from and we get to the root of the issue, this is where the deep work comes in. This is how you really regain that sovereignty over your emotions. You understand why you're being so emotional, and you all are, just like I am. Now we get to the root of it. And we're like, oh, okay, well, yeah, I feel rejected because when I was a kid, women didn't ever pay attention to me because I was, 50 pounds overweight. Okay. Well, now we're getting somewhere. So you feel rejected by women, or maybe for those of you who have been in multiple marriages, maybe your second wife does something and it just pisses you off, like to no end, just absolutely pisses you off. And you don't know why. How many of you even spend time thinking about it? You probably don't. But let's say you do this time. You're like, okay, I'm pissed. She said this thing and I'm pissed about it. And then you spend some time journaling and you write down the scenario, and then you do the deep work of figuring out what it actually is making you feel. Maybe it's making you feel lonely, or making you feel stupid, or making you feel rejected. And then you start thinking about where that comes from. And maybe you figure out that your first wife did the exact same thing, and you correlated that with the demise of your marriage. That could actually be what's happening. You could correlate something she does or says on a regular basis with the downfall or just destruction or demise of your relationship. And now your new wife is doing that, and you're feeling emotional because you're still emotionally hurt from this previous relationship, this previous woman. You never got it resolved. And what's going to end up happening is self-fulfilling prophecy. You're going to blow it up. You're going to mess it up. I say you. You could swap that out with me. Because I do the same thing. I'm going to mess it up. I'm going to blow it up. We do this. And we don't even know why we do it. You got to uncover. You got to do deep work. And it's important you do. And it's very hard. It's very difficult to do. It's going to be emotional. It's going to be challenging. It's going to drum up bad experiences and past trauma. It's not fun. But if you want to reign over, like I was saying, reign over your emotions, then this is the work that you have to do. And the last point, so let me hit on the first four and then I'll hit the last. The first four are, number one, you know your worth. You're divine. You're a divine human being just because you are, period. You are. Number two, you are responsible for your emotions, no one else. Number three, your confidence is earned. And number four, begin to objectify those emotions and do the deep work of figuring out where they come from. Number four, that was. Number five is physical health. Right? There's physical reasons why being strong, being healthy, being in shape, staying hydrated, getting sleep. There are physical, scientifically proven reasons why this is going to help you be less emotional. I'm talking about strength, building muscle. I'm talking about getting the appropriate amount of sleep. Some of you probably balked when you said, I wake up at 6:30. Yeah, I'm not a 4:30 guy. I'm a 6:30 guy. And I like to get 7-8 hours of sleep just about every night. 7 to 8 hours of sleep because it's important to me. Body composition, fat, muscle, bone density, water. What does that look like? Is it appropriate? Cardio, stamina, nutrition, fuel you're putting into your body. Physical reasons, scientifically proven reasons why this is going to help you feel better. First, we have endorphins. Excuse me, I'm getting worked up and a little tickle in my throat. We have endorphins. This is that they're all connected. These are hormones that are released when you're in shape, when you're exercising, also when you're having sex, doing physical activities, doing things that are good for you. Endorphins are released into the reward center of your brain to tell you this is a good thing. You should be doing this. Dopamine is also released, saying you should do this again. You know how you went to the gym this morning and you got up and it sucked, but you went and it kind of hurt and you're a little sore now, but for some reason you oddly, strangely feel really good? That's chemicals in your body saying, do that more. I like that. I like when I go to the gym. I like when we have sex with a woman that we love. Like, I like that. Let's do that again sometime in the very near future. That's your body's way of saying, do that. Keep doing that. It's good for you. It's healthy. So it releases to the reward centers of our brain, and then it does a few things. Dopamine and these endorphins, these other hormones that are released, help you battle depression. People who are healthier, physically healthier, have less depression because those endorphins and dopamine help battle depression. They also help you deal appropriately with stress and anxiety. So if you're stressed out and you're anxious and you go to the gym, why do you feel better? Because of the chemicals that are released in your body through those activities are actually physically making you feel better. So it helps you with depression. It helps you deal with stress and anxiety. And also it does another thing. It improves your self-image. So that goes back to worth. It improves, scientifically proven, that it improves the way that you feel about yourself. Right? How many times have you, I know I've done this. I'll go to the gym and I get done with my workout and I'm like, I look in the mirror, turn sideways, getting rid of the gut, or I'm looking at my arms, they look a little bigger. Maybe I got a little pump on, but in reality, I probably look the same way I did before, but I feel better, right? Like I feel better about myself. I'm like, oh yeah, I look pretty good. Do I look any different than I did an hour earlier? Probably not a whole lot different, other than my hair is a little messed up and disheveled, and maybe I'm a little sweatier. But I probably really don't look all that much different, but I look in the mirror and I think I am, because my mind's telling me, hey, you're awesome. Congratulations, you did that workout. You should feel pretty damn good about yourself. That's not hyperbole. I'm not making that up. That's scientifically proven. Guys, this is how we become the master of our emotions. This is how we avoid being tossed to and fro emotionally based on the environment we find ourselves in or the way somebody else is feeling. You know, somebody else is, I don't want to feel down if somebody else is down. I don't want my day to be ruined because somebody said something mean to me. And yet all of us, that happens to all of us. So we can learn to overcome it by these 5 steps and more. This is not an exhaustive list, but I really want you to regain your emotional sovereignty. And I'll tell you why, because it's manly. It's manly. And there's a difference between masculine and manly. But manliness is your ability to harness masculine characteristics for productive outcomes. And those masculine characteristics are biologically constructed. They're not societally constructed. They're biologically constructed. Emotions are a biological construct. So there's nothing we can do to feel or not feel or be emotional. We are biologically emotional. But what we can do, if we're to be like men, is to learn how to harness our biological makeup for productive outcomes, which means that if we harness our emotions, we're going to make better decisions. We're going to serve better. We're going to become an asset rather than a liability. And we're going to feel better about ourselves. And people will have less control over us. External circumstances will have less control over us. We'll make clearer, more sound, more rational decisions. We'll work harder. We'll be better. We'll produce better outcomes if we can regain sovereignty over our emotions. I hope that helps, guys. I truly hope it does. This is a lesson for me, like I said earlier, as much as it is anybody else. Please let me know if I left anything out. Let me know if there's a particular point that you thought that really resonated or hit well with you, and we'll keep having the discussion. Excuse me. Gotta figure out what's going on there. But anyways, that's all I've got for now. I do want to say Merry Christmas. That's going to be coming up on Sunday. So just in a couple of days, as of the release of this podcast. Remember the reason for the season. It's not for giving. It's not for Santa Claus. It's not even just for the joy of our children. It's for the joy of humankind. It's the reason we celebrate is the birth of Christ, the greatest man to ever walk the earth, and somebody we ought to strive to be more like in every way. Remember, that's the reason for Christmas. Enjoy it. Make some memories with your families, and we'll be back next week. Until then, go out there, take action, regain sovereignty over your emotions, and become a man you are meant to be.